My name is Angela Caicedo, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. I've been here before, so it's always really good to see familiar faces. The first talk that I have today, we're going to talk a little bit what's happening with the APIs in Java related to date and time. So if you already used date and time in the past, you see before Java 8, we have a different API. It wasn't very good. We have a lot of issues with that API. That's why, as a different effort, a group of engineers start working on a solution, on a better API, okay? It came so good that what we did on Java 8 was kind of stop what we have for date and time and bring in that new API, okay? So that's what we're gonna talk today. That's what we're gonna see. And to be honest with you, I have a lot of code. Most of the slides are code. It's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Because if you think about date and time, pretty much you already know what a date is. You know that a year has a month, and a month has a date. You know that the day had hour, minute, second. So the theory behind it is logical. It's what we use every day. So what I try to use is, given the API, go through it and have like exercises. How would I find out my birthday? So how would I find out if this year my birthday is gonna be on a Monday or a Saturday, so I can plan a big party? When is the next paycheck for the company? So in the United States, I'm not very sure how it works here. In the United States, the paycheck is twice a month, the 15th and the last day of the month. But of course, you're not gonna pay it on Sunday. So if the last day of the month happens to be on Sunday, the paycheck will be Friday, okay? So how do we find out those sort of things with the API, okay? Another cool thing is most of the time we use the ISO calendar, but I know in Japan you have a different calendar. So how can you actually interact with other calendars, either the Japanese, the Thai, or the ISO one, okay? So how these can actually interoperate. So all of those things, I try to have like small samples, and we're gonna through it how to do things, okay? Again, my name is Angela Caicedo, and it's a real pleasure. Any question related to Java, please send me an email. So I'm a Java evangelist, and I'm actually the bridge between you guys and the product team. So questions, things that you would like to see in the platform, let me know. Things that you think that doesn't work properly, let us know, because we are the bridge between you and the product team, okay? So the agenda, we talk about a little bit of the core API. That's gonna be the standard ISO related one. And then we move into how we can actually create dates that are neutral of the calendar, right? So how can we create a date that will work in Japan, in Thailand, and in the United States, okay? And then how I can format that information, okay? How can I print out the data coming from a date? How can I parse that data to create an object? And once I create the object, how can I print it out? So all the little cool things that we have available. Oh, what happened? Okay. So a little bit of background. I briefly mentioned, so we used to have a package to actually use to cover everything related to Date Time API. It wasn't very good. We're gonna see what were the issues with that. So along that side, there was Stephen Colborn that was actually starting a new kind of API called the Date Time API. That it was actually the GSR 310. Really good, very well adopted by developers. So what we end up doing, instead of recreating the wheel, we just bring that into Java 8. So this API is available from Java 8. Why is it changing without me saying anything? I'm not touching anything. Might be this control. Don't like it. Don't change it. Okay. Now, how do we represent time? So there are two ways to represent. One is the human time, right? So we talk about year, month, hours, etc. Okay? And machine time, okay? A particular timestamp on your code, and you just want to get a number of that, okay? And we're actually measuring against a beginning, and we talk about later on more of that. That beginning is what we call the epoch, okay? So these APIs support both, okay? So it's going to be really nice. These are the packages and the classes we're going to be talking about. I'm not going to go into many details because we're going to have a lot of examples. So this is just a big overview of what we have. Time, format, time zones to support different time zones, calendars to have different support for different calendars, and then some temporal to adjust. So maybe I want to take the date of today, but I want to, from that date, find what is the next Wednesday from that day. Things like that. We want to do some changes to the current date that I'm holding, and we're going to just play with that. Issues that we have, so before we have the date and calendar, that was part of the util package. Issues with that, the objects were actually mutables. So once you create a date, you can change it, okay? And there were no thread safe, so big issue there, okay? What we try to do in this API, and we're gonna see over and over again, the objects are immutable. So once you create an object, you cannot change it, okay? So we're gonna see that creating a date or a time is not based on a constructor. We're gonna use methods that return an object, okay? And we're gonna see that a lot. If I wanna change my original date, you cannot do that. What you do is you create a new one that take the value of this one plus some modifications that you want to apply to it, okay? That's the way you change a date, by getting a new one from the original one, doing some adjustment, okay? It's one-to-one comparison. So here we can see the old util calendar and the new APIs, how the classes kind of map to each other, okay? So we talk about instant instead of date. We talk about local date, local time, local date and time, and we're just gonna talk about all that. So a little bit of, for your reference, how things were before, how does it look now. As I say, the design patterns change, so a lot of the time, we're gonna be using static methods to create dates, okay? So we're gonna be using a lot of create from, okay? So for example, we're gonna be using local date from a particular information. And again, this is just a snapshot of the way we're creating things. Again, we don't see as usually we have in the Java API the get method, okay? Or the set method, because we cannot modify it. So the first one is the Java time, is basically the ISO calendar. This is just an example of the information we're gonna have. We talk about local date, it's pretty much just the date. Local time is just referring to a time, and we have local date and time that comprise both, has a date and a time, okay? We have offsets, offset of a date at a time. We do have support for time zones, so very important. You know, when you're scheduling a meeting, you're scheduling with a US time. If you are meeting with your partner here in Japan, it's actually very good if you can already get the corresponding Japanese time for that date that you just created, depending on what time zone you are. So all those things are gonna be possible. Some enumeration to begin with. Of course, you refer to the day of the week, Monday through Sunday, and the month, January to December. Just a little thing to note, how maybe bad, how many issues the previous API has. For the days in the previous API, it started from 1 to 7, okay, as we have right now. But for the month, in the old one, they started in 0 to 11. So we wanted to be both standard, so month also started from 1 to 12, okay? So small difference there. So the only thing that we're doing is print it out, day of the week, Monday, and you can actually have arithmetic operations. In this case, we say add 3, so that means it will print out Thursday. We can do things like February, right? How many days this February from this year has. And we're gonna see, for example, how to print different length for especially February. You can actually print out information in a different notation. So you use text styles. And with the text styles, what we have is you can either use full notation, narrow, or short. And that's what we're displaying there. So for the day Monday, what we're trying to do is display the name, and we're using a particular style. The first one is the full one, narrow one, just the first letter, or the short one. And it will be the same for month, okay? So you get the month, for example, August, and then you print it out in the different formats. Okay? So let's start with local date. So this represents a date, right? And the format of year, month, and day, following the ISO calendar, okay? What we have here, see how I construct a particular day, okay? So what we have is create a new date that is gonna be November 20th of 2000. This is how you create that date, okay? We can adjust that, so I can create a new date from a particular date, right? So remember, I cannot modify date, but I can use date to get an adjustment to say next day of the week, that is Wednesday. So from this date, I wanna get the next Wednesday. And once you find out that, you're gonna get a new date, that is that Wednesday. Okay, so those are the sort of things that you can actually do. For example, from a local date, remember this is how you create. So I'm creating July 9th of 2012. Get which day of the week is that particular day, okay? For example, finding the first Wednesday after specific date, okay? So we need a specific date. In this case is November 20th of 2000. I wanna find out next Wednesday. So we use an adjuster, and we will see adjusters a little bit more details. The next Wednesday, okay? I take that date, and I'm gonna get a new one using that adjustment, and then I just print it out. Okay? We have the month of the year. So for example, you can query, what is the month right now? Okay? That will give you a month. And from that month, you can actually find out the length. You can actually get a second date and print out the length of that particular month. Okay? You can create a month using February of a particular year, for example. Okay? So what it basically did here is, remember how February has different days? So it's actually telling you, in this year, February has 30 days. In the second, it only have 28. Okay? Then we have days. So pretty much the same idea. What is interesting here is to see if 29 of February is a valid date for a particular year. So that's what we're trying to find out. We create the date February 29, okay? And we wanna see if it's a valid date for the year 2000. Okay, that's one way to find out. Second way is you have the year 2000 and find out if it's lip or not. So that's pretty much about date, okay? We also have representation for time, okay? Again, as you can see, it's pretty much the same idea. So we have local time now. So give me my time right now. From that time, you can get the hour, minutes, or seconds, okay? Pretty straightforward. Now you have an object that combines both date and time, right? So again, the functionality is pretty much exactly the same. Here I'm trying to play a little bit with dates. So the first one, I'm just printing out information just for fun. First one, give me the date and time. So now we have both date and time of right now. Create a local from this particular information. So I'm creating April 15 of 1994 at 11:30, okay? Print that out. Then you can associate that with a particular zone, okay? So see how we're actually adding up. So we have a date, we have a time, we can add a zone, we can actually add a chronology. So we're gonna be playing with these things. You can actually do a little bit of arithmetic. So my local time right now, but add 6 months, okay? Or you can go even backwards. Give me 6 months before, okay? Now, time zones. So how you define different time zones, right? So there are two things that you need to specify. You need to specify first the region and the city. Where is it, right? So region and city, and then the offset corresponding to Greenwich, okay? How many hours we have difference with Greenwich in UK, okay? For this particular, we have two classes that will help us, is zone ID and zone offset, okay? So for the ID, it's just a specifier that is actually providing us with the rules to converting from one zone to the other, okay? And the zone offset is just the offset corresponding to Greenwich, okay? So how we use this, how I can play back and forth with different zones. So for example, what I'm trying to do here is my first question is, what are the time zones that I have available? So I'm going to just print out the time zones available. Normally, the time zones are in an intervals of 1 hour, okay? Sometimes they are not. For simplicity, all I'm doing is printing out those time zones that the difference are hourly, okay? So that's why we have the last if seconds, so we just want exact hour different with Greenwich. So what we're trying to do is we get the available zones, IDs, through the zone ID, so static method call here. We find out what time it is right now, okay? From the zones that we got, we just sorted out new collection API, and then we start printing out that information, going through all the different zones, IDs, and printing out the information as long as there is no seconds of hours associated. And then what we get is a huge line, a huge printout of all the zones and the time and the offsets, okay? So remember how we have date and time, and then date and time together? So now what we're gonna have is date, time that are actually associated with a zone. So we have a zone, date, and time, okay? So handles a date and a time with a corresponding time zone, okay? We have offsets for date and time, and we have offset time, okay? And let's see how this works. Okay. What are we gonna do in these two slides? I'm traveling from San Francisco to here, okay? So I wanna know, print it out, what time I'm leaving San Francisco, but I also wanna print out what time I arrive in Tokyo, okay? Depending on the different time zones and everything. Another thing is I wanna see if they are actually in daylight saving or not, okay? First, let's find out when I'm leaving from the United States, from San Francisco, okay? So I'm going to use, and we're going to see a little bit later on, the formatted. So the format that I want to print out the information is going to be the month, day, and a year, and then the hour and minutes, okay? This is just how I want to format. I'm going to create the local time. I know what time I'm leaving, so I'm leaving July 20th of 2013 at this particular time, okay? I know that I'm leaving from LA, so my zone ID is America, Los Angeles, okay? Here I'm creating the zone ID. Now I need a date and a time that has associated that zone. So I have zone, date, and time of the date that I'm leaving with the zone that I specify. So that object encapsulates all that, okay? Now all I need to do is print out when I'm leaving, and I'm using a formatted for that. So the information will be nicely printed like this, okay? Why we have an exceptions? Because when we try to give the date a format, there could be an exceptions when trying to apply it. So that's why we have. Now, what happened on the other side? So I know that my flight takes 10 hours and 50 minutes, okay? So that's 650 minutes in total. So what I can do is add the duration of my flight, to my departure date, and just make sure that I put it in Japan time, in Japanese time zone, okay? So first, the time zone for the arrival will be Japan, right? So it will be Asia and Tokyo, okay? Now, I am creating my data time associated with that zone by providing my date, right? So what I'm doing is using my departure, calling the method zone same instance. So I'm using the same instance that I'm doing it, plus 550 minutes. So what I'm doing is, I know the time I'm leaving, find out what time it is correspondent to Tokyo, and add the duration of the flight. Okay, that will be my arrival time. Once I know my arrival time, I just format, print it out. Okay? Cool things about the zone ID class is you can actually get the rules for a particular zone, things like daytime. So at the arriving zone, you can get the rules, and you can find out if they are in a daylight saving or not. Okay, so the zone encapsulates all that information. Okay, now offsets. How to find out the last Thursday of July? Okay, which day is the last Thursday of July? How do we do that? So I get a July date. It doesn't really matter. I need a date, and an offset, okay, to be able to call to create an offset data time, okay? Then what I do is I adjust that value to be last in month, and I want to reference the Thursday. So I'm doing is I'm calling the last Thursday of that particular month, and I'm creating a new date and time from which I print out what it is, okay? I get the last Thursday for that. So pretty much all we did until now was human representation of dates, right? Now we want to talk about instance. What happens if in your application you need to take a snapshot of what time it is, what instant it is? So that's what we call, and we have instance. It's going to represent nanoseconds on a timeline, okay? How you create it, again, for example, instant.now, okay? Instant is actually counting time from the beginning of the era. In this case, the date is January 1st of 1970. Anything before that date will be a negative instant. Anything after that date will be a positive instant, okay? We do have a minimum and a maximum value for representing either the smaller possible value in an instance or the maximum one. So how do we use it, okay? So for example, you're gonna run something for 1 hour, okay? So you need to find out from this instant 1 hour from now, okay? So instant.now plus 1 hour, okay? So that's the representation for that particular instant 1 hour later. Okay. Now, how many seconds have occurred since the beginning of the Java epoch? Okay, so we can actually call the method on instance with 0 as a value, so the beginning, until now. So see how flexible the API is. From the beginning until, and then I create an instant that is right now. Okay, how you want to count it, so you can actually define the units that you want to use for that. In this case, I'm saying, give me the answer in seconds. So it's actually going to be a pretty big number. Okay, you can move from instant to local date. So even though they're different representation, you can actually go back and forth. So what we're doing here is having an instant and creating a local date from an instant. Okay, in this case, an instant and a zone. Okay, so again, even though there are different representations, we can actually use it back and forth. Okay, now if we want to do some arithmetic-based kind of things into the dates, so we use the temporal interface. Okay, temporal accessor interface provide read-only version of the temporal interface. Again, not possible to change anything once you create it. And then chronofields, so we're actually being used them a little bit. So let's see how we can keep using it. Finding new dates from a particular, so these are the adjusters that we're being using before, okay? So it's taking a particular date, adjusting in some way, and then getting a new date, okay? So for example, we're trying to create a particular date, October 15, 2000, okay? From that day, get the day of the week. We can actually adjust to get the first day of the month from that particular date. Or we can actually get a new date adjusted by the first in the month, so first Monday of the month. Okay, or we can adjust by last day of the month. Okay, again, remember, we're always getting a new date, not modifying the existing one. Or we can do things first day of the next month, or first day of the next year, things like that. Okay. So that was pretty much using the existing adjusters. Okay, there are different adjusters you can use. The cool thing is you can create your own ones. So this is the example that I was briefly mentioned at the beginning. How do I find out the pay date, right? So it's twice a month. One is the 15th, one is the last day of the month. If it's on Saturday or Sunday, the payday will happen on the Friday before, okay? So we can create our own adjuster from a particular date. When is the next paycheck, okay? To be able to customize it, what we need to do is we need to implement the temporal adjuster interface. And there's only one method, adjust into, okay? So let's do it. So first part is, this is the method adjust into, okay? We're getting a date as an input. The first thing to know if that date happened in the first 15 days, okay? So that means I'm gonna be paying the 15. If no, I'm gonna be paid at the end, okay? So if my day of the month is less than 15, the paycheck will be the 15, okay? If it's not, that means it's from 16 to the end of the month. What I'm doing is I'm taking an adjuster and I'm taking the last day of the month, okay? So we know which one is the day, either the 15th or which one is the last day. But we need to verify if any of those dates is actually Saturday or Sunday, okay? If so, what we need to do from that date, I wanna adjust to be the previous Friday, okay? and then return it. Now, how do I call it? So payday adjuster, that's my new class created, and 2 samples of calling the same adjuster with June 3rd, the payday will be the 14th, and for June 19th will be June 28th. Now you can query your dates, and again, there are predefined ways to query, or you can create your own queries. This is an example of predefined one. What we're trying to do is the precision of different objects, okay? So what is the measure that we have? For example, a local date is a day, so the precision is day. A local date time, because it includes the time, precision is gonna be nanos. A year, so the precision is years. For month, precision is month. And for instant, also is gonna be measured in nanos, okay? How do we get that information? So we're using a predefined query that is precision. And from that query, I can apply that query to a particular date. So I create my local date to be now, and I'm gonna query, and the query that I want is precision. And that's what I'm doing, just printing out from that day the precision. So for date time, for year, year month, and for instant, okay? How to query your objects. You can create your own queries, okay? And this is when things get nice. So for example, if you provide a date, you wanna know if that day happens during your vacation. So you know that you have 2 vacations in the year. One, you're going to Disneyland for a spring break, and the second one, you just have a family reunion, okay? So what we try to do when you do your custom queries, again, one interface, temporal query interface, and one single method to implement is the query form. So this is an example of the query form for that particular requirement, okay? So given a date, okay, we extract the year, the month, and the day for that particular date, okay? And very simple, what I say is getting the value of that particular month, okay? If it's actually April, and if the day is between this date, actually we're in spring break. Or if the month is August and is between these 2 dates, I'm actually also in family reunion, okay? So how to do custom queries, okay? The way to call it is the same as standard queries, okay? Now we have something new is duration. And duration just measure an amount of time using a time-based values. In this case, we're gonna be using seconds and nanoseconds, okay? We have periods, okay? Use a date-based value. So this one we're gonna be measuring with years, month, and days, okay? And we have the chrono units that we have used before. So what are the units, the measurements that we are using, okay? We can actually do cool things. For example, if you have 2 dates, you can find out if an instant is actually between those dates. So a little bit of sample. So I have a duration from 2 instances, and I wanna find out how many nanos there are between those 2. Okay? If you want to add something to your instant, so you get a duration of 10 seconds, okay? And then what you do is, in your instance, you just call plus and then that duration, okay? So from your instance, you're just going to add those 10 seconds, okay? And then the last one is between. So you want to find out if what you're measuring is between previous and current. Good one, finding how old you are. I hate this one. I never want to know how old I am. After you're 40, you stop counting, right? Okay, so we have the local date is right now, and we want to find out when my next birthday is, okay? So there are different situations. It could happen that my birthday already passed, right? Or it could happen that my birthday is today. okay? If those are the case, my birthday, my next birthday, is next year, right? If my birthday hasn't passed and it's not today, my birthday is this year, okay? So first, we need to know when is my next birthday and how many days do we have until there. Actually, no, hold on. This is a different example. This is how old I am. So forget it. So what we have here is I'm finding today, and I'm going back to my birthday, and I'm just calculating from my birthday, since I was born, until today, how old I am, okay? Sorry, I wasn't really looking at the code, okay? So very simple, date today, date of my birthday, okay? A period between my birthday and today, okay? And then that period, I want to count using days, okay? That's what we're doing, okay? From that period, we can get year, month, days, and you already have P2, that is the counting of days. So that's what we have, year, months, and day, and the actual days since I was born, okay? This is the one I was talking about, my next birthday. Okay, so you already hear about the two cases, either was before or today, or what is happening, okay? So we're all good. So we get my birthday, okay? We get next birthday. What is next birthday is my birthday with year today, okay? So we're assuming my birthday hasn't passed, okay? If my next birthday is before today, so we can do things like checking if it's before or today, that means my birthday is next year. So that's what we're doing, plus 1 year, okay? Once we find out when is my birthday, either this year or next year, I want to count how many days until that day, okay? So we need a period from today to next birthday, and I want to count using days. So that's how I can actually extract when is my next birthday and the total of days, okay? So that's pretty much for the ISO kind of representation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about calendar neutral APIs. How do we support the Japanese, the Thai, Hindu, and all that? So the idea is we shouldn't assume that we're counting in months, days. We really want to try to be neutral. How easy it is to move from one calendar to another. So this shows how easy it is. I have a particular date, okay, that is July 20th, 2013, and the time is 1930, right? And I just use that date, and I can create a Japanese date from the date that I created using the ISO representation. I can get the Chirac, Mingu, or the Thai one, okay? That's simple, just passing the day, and I'm getting a new date, either a Japanese date, a Thai Buddhist date, or any time of date, okay? Very simple to move from an ISO to non-ISO based date. If you need neutral dates, so you're creating an entry into your calendar and you want it to be neutral no matter where you are, so this is what we're gonna be using. We have a particular locale, and we're gonna be using chronologies, okay? So based on that chronology, I'm going to create a date that is right now, okay? In the same way, from that day, you can extract the different information, month, year, era, etc. Okay, things that you can actually do, for example, if you wanna have neutral dates sometimes, this is how you create it. So you create a date from now, right now, into a chronology, local date. So this is a date with chronology information, okay? From that date, you just take a particular time and just say, for example, noon. You can take a chronology date and time and either extract that information into a local time, Okay, so you can actually move back and forth from chronology to ISO ones. Okay, you can also use time zones. So this is how you use zone information with neutral ones. But pretty much the same idea. This is how you map the chronology ones to the neutral. So it's pretty much is one-to-one, okay? So chronology field, date of month to days, month of year will be month, year will be year, etc. So that's just for your reference. For example, if I don't know what are the chronologies available, how can I print it out? So there is a static method in chronology that is get available chronologies. So they will list you, they will give you the list of the supported chronologies, and that's what we're trying to do. Once I have the list, just print it out, so it's giving me this particular list. So these are kind of the chronologies that are supported. Japanese is one of those, okay? You can also create chronologies from locales. So in this case, I'm creating a chronology that is based on the Japanese locale. So when I create a date that is 2014, September 29, I create a new date using the chronology that was the Japanese locale. Okay. Now, formatting. So for this one, it's pretty much, okay, you're going to create a particular date from a particular information. So you're going to parse that data to create your object. Once you have it created, you want to print it out. So how you're going to format that information. So we have both parsing and formatting, okay? We have the old date and time format builder, again, for customizing the information, how you display the information. Just some example of literals. You can actually have control of the width, the sign, how many zeros you want to put before, things like that. What we want to do, this is what we're working on, is to be able to actually even improve it better, to have case sensitive, have optionals, fields, and things like that, be really, really more strict. So this is sorry guys. Okay, this is an example of how to parse data, okay? And this is what we're trying to do. I'm going to try to create a local time in a particular format that I am describing, okay? So what I'm saying is I'm going to create a local time parsing S using a particular format. What is that format? That's the one I created right here. So you can define your format, okay? And your format can have particular things that you need to parse, and it can actually have an optional values in there. So this is how you define. These are just an extensive list of all the options that you have for formatting, different patterns. Again, I'm not going through it, but I know you get a copy of the presentation, so it comes really handy when you need to get the information. Okay? Now printing out information. So this is just using the previous table, how to get my date, okay, and just format into the different output here using different values from that table, okay? So how to keep the spaces here, the tabulation, etc. Some predefined date time formats that we have. Again, the extensive list of the formatters and what will be the output. So again, this is the predefined for the API, so you can already use them. And the last piece, so all the things that we saw, we also have an improvement in the user interface. So in the JavaFX, we also have a new control that is called the date picker, okay? So pretty much allow you to have this, and you can actually select the date that you want, okay? And this is just the associated code and you just have listeners when something happened in that particular date, you can actually get the value of what was selected. Okay, so again, the corresponding UI is being also updated. So again, to summarize, I think it's a really robust API. It's totally thread safe, so compared to the previous one that was not. You saw in all the examples how we create dates and times, how you can associate those dates and time with a particular time zone, how to make them neutral using chronologies and locales. So all that. So again, I think it's a lot of fun, a lot of flexibility that is provided for you. There is some resources that you're welcome to get. And one of the few differences, so I come all the way from Sun Microsystem. So I've been an evangelist for quite a long time. After 10 years, you don't count anymore. So one of the differences between Sun Microsystem and Oracle is that we have to provide you with this slide. Whatever I talk, it might change in the future. So the safe harbor statement, I make sure that I put it up, and you all read it, right? Right? Still here? Good.